Hello and welcome to Chin Hairs and F-Bombs Conversations with Girlfriends. This is your gal pal Sal, also known as SallyAnn Gray, and I am your host. And today our conversation is about the invisibility of middle-aged women. So I have brought two lovely guests with me today. We'll be talking with Barb and Monique, and we will be talking about our experiences of feeling invisible as a middle-aged woman, how we got there, how it has impacted us, how we feel about it, all those things. So we'll get to that. Right now, I want to do some introductions. And as I mentioned, I'm SallyAnn Gray. I'm your host, and I am a writer living in Maine. I am working on my first book right now. It is a memoir. I live in Maine with my husband and my two wild children, and I really love it here. I am originally from the Midwest. And so that's me, and I would love for my lovely guests to introduce themselves now.
Hi, I am Monique Garrett. Recently, I've been calling myself a fractional marketing strategist, and that means I help usually small companies put together and execute their marketing plans. A lot of that is in the professional services and software field, and that tends to be in the life sciences industry. I've been doing that for about 12 years now, and I'm loving it. I really enjoy getting to speak with and work with other small companies. I am in southeastern Pennsylvania, and I have one son who is a sophomore in high school, preparing for driver's ed. So I'm looking forward to that.
Terrifying.
Everyone stay off the roads at this point. But that's where I am right now.
Hi, I'm Barbara Evans. I own my own creative agency, and that means I do graphic design, web design, and all kinds of marketing and design stuff for folks, small companies, small business owners, solo entrepreneurs that I like to think of as change makers, people who are about making the world a better place in their own way. I've been doing that for about 12 years also, interestingly, and I really love it. I love working with those folks and helping tell their stories. It's a lot of fun. It makes me really happy. And it makes me really happy not to be knee deep in sort of corporate rat race stuff too. I live in central Pennsylvania right now. I have two kiddos. They are grown-ups, and I like to run. I like to play outside. I do like to travel. Travel is a big part of my life. And I should mention, since we're talking about invisible woman syndrome and menopause and perimenopause, that I am currently 55.
You're youngin'.
Yep.
And SallyAnn's a baby, so
Still fresh.
Oh, I don't feel like a baby most days.
No.
So this is SallyAnn. I am 44, almost 45, and I'm in perimenopause, like pretty deeply in perimenopause. I think my perimenopause journey started when I was 38. I wanted to also talk about how we know each other. So each of us work for ourselves and are service providers, and that's how we know each other. And we've forged friendships out of that as well. So I got to know Barb through a business coaching group that I was in. And then Barb introduced me to Monique. And then we started doing this wonderful thing called virtual coffee so that we could get to know each other and develop our relationships more by having regular contact with each other, even though geographically we are dispersed. So every other Thursday, the three of us jump on a call and have virtual coffee together, and we talk about work or we don't talk about work. And it's been a really lovely way to get to know you two. And I think it's neat that we've been able to make this relationship, even though, like, Monique, I've never met you in real life. Like, I would love to. I look forward to the day. And Barb, we got to meet one time, and that was wonderful. And I look forward to the next time.
I think it's interesting that we have not had that much in-person interaction, but I feel like I know you guys very well, number one. But I also think that our conversations have been really relevant to our topic today. So many of our conversations on that virtual coffee, we're talking about like professional challenges and things that are coming up. We're also talking about our successes, and you guys are always really good at calling each other out. Like if we start being discouraging to ourselves, you guys are right there, right? You're really good at that. And I feel like that's an important component. Just as you were saying this, SallyAnn, that we know each other through virtual coffee, it made me think, you know what? Like, it's fascinating how helpful this little virtual coffee has been when we go back to our topic for today. I think it might be an interesting recommendation at the end of this. So.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, we're like a little networking, like mentoring group. I mean, we're cheerleaders for each other, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And each of us working for ourselves, like we understand the great parts of that and the hard parts of that. And I really have always appreciated when you all lift me up when I need it and vice versa. Mm-hmm. All right, well, so that's how we know each other. Let's start talking about what we're here to talk about. I'm going to start by setting the stage and explaining something that I just learned about in my research for this podcast and getting prepared for it. I didn't know that there was actually a term that could be applied to this feeling that Monique and Barb and I have talked about, and I've talked about with other friends, my friend Rivka, who's been on the podcast, about around 40, noticing that we're not getting noticed, that this feeling of invisibility that was new to us and is a slow roll. I mean, it's not like one day you flip a switch and you're like, hey, what's going on around here? So the term is called Invisible Woman Syndrome. Yeah. And so studies have been done on this, and 70% of women report feeling invisible as they age, and they're calling the phenomenon Invisible Woman Syndrome. That was really interesting to me because before I spoke with my friend Rivka about it, I thought I was all alone. When she first said it, and I was like a baby 40-year-old at the time, and she just said it in passing. She's older than me by a handful of years. And I was like, wait a minute, you feel that too? Like, I had never heard anyone talk about it before. And then to learn that 70% of women feel this, I was like, okay, I am not alone, which I love that. And that's one of the reasons why I do this podcast, is to help talk about things that I don't think are talked about enough, to help us all feel less alone. And so that we can share our experiences. It's really isolating to feel like you're the only one going through something. So Invisible Woman Syndrome, didn't know it had a name, but there you go. So I'd like to explain here our different ages. So like I said, I'm 44, almost 45. Monique, Barb, remind us how old you are.
So 2 days ago, turned 61.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, Monique.
Thanks.
You look amazing. I did not know you were over 60. I had no idea.
Why, thank you. Your check's in the mail.
Me, I'm 55 and I am about 2 years into like full menopause.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I'm about halfway through perimenopause. I've been in this game for like 7 years or something at this point. And I'm taking hormone replacement therapy and just started that like 6 months ago. And that is helping mitigate some of my symptoms and helping me live a more comfortable life. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask each of you, when did you notice feeling invisible, and did you, and how did it make you feel?
Well, so been a really long time, but I definitely noticed at 40, suddenly, very abruptly feeling like I was no longer an object of scrutiny, of desire, of something, right? Like there had been this constant background awareness of the male gaze, right? Just constant. So constant, in fact, that you don't register it. And then like when it's not there to the same degree, you notice it. And so the withdrawing of that was like a very physical felt thing for me. And it was weird and confusing because it was both a relief and kind of like horror, right? Because like you're taught so much of your life that you have to meet the approval. You have to be approved by this, but also it's so dangerous, right? Like, so you're at war with these things the whole time. So I was very aware of just that the eye had moved elsewhere, but it wasn't just men, young men. It was like everyone. All of a sudden, you had to work harder to get people's attention in, I don't know, retail situations or whatever. Like, and I just couldn't figure it out. So there's more to that. Like there's definitely an arc to it. I definitely had a rebound from that in my mid 40s. And then there's been another shift now as I'm passing through the early stages of like full menopause and letting myself go gray and not giving a fuck anymore. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, that's a whole other topic. So I'll pause there and hand the mic to Monique and let her talk.
Yeah. So I have been aware of it, of the existence of the invisibility feelings, right? I personally did not feel them until more recently in my life. And I'm pretty much talking about from a professional situation. And part of that may be that because like we do with our virtual coffee, I also have, I think, SallyAnn, you refer to them as your tribe sometimes, but I have women that I used to work with who we've all gone our separate ways, and in different areas of their lives, they physically moved to different locations. We don't work together anymore, but we keep in touch. And from a personal perspective, I feel like maybe that's why I'm not feeling it in my personal life as much, right? Because I have this support structure. Now, these folks are also supportive of me in my professional life, but since I'm not working with them, I don't get that daily or in-process support, right? I can tell them about things that have happened after the fact, and they'll be like, don't put up with that crap. But I think the invisibility professionally has come more in the last few years as I feel like I'm getting older. I still feel like I have a lot to offer, a lot of value, and learning new things every day. Like a geek about all the interesting technologies that are available to us now. But I don't know that I give that off as a first impression, right? So I feel like a lot of times my voice may not be heard the way I want it to be heard or heard at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that in some ways you're prejudged.
Yeah. As I was thinking about this for the podcast, I remembered a situation, and this was years ago, that I was in a meeting, and it was with the CEO of the company, myself, and the sales leader. And we were talking about what are we going to do to expand the pipeline. And the sales leader was rattling off some accounts and talking about what was going on with them. And I stopped him and I said, hey, I have some ideas here. What if we did this, this, and this? And he was so focused on just getting through it that he blew me off, right? And he was like, yeah, we can talk about that, and continued on. And I felt a little bit like I had been just shooed away or whatever, but the boss actually stopped him and said, wait a minute, let's back up. Can we talk through that idea again and hear more about it? And I remember feeling very grateful for him doing that, because I had felt like I had been dismissed and that my voice wasn't really being heard, right? And that was like that particular day, I just felt very grateful. And this was probably 20 years ago at this point. So, but it has stuck with me because it impacted me a lot. It made me feel like what I had to say was useful, valuable. I was contributing in some way. But it also made me start thinking about, hey, I got to be doing that for other people too, and be tuned into that.
Exactly. Yeah, you mentioned that was formative for you, that experience, and that you try to pay that forward, right? That when you're in meetings and someone is younger or in some way marginalized potentially, that you try to make sure that they get a voice, that they get to be heard as well. And I think that's wonderful. I'm sure it's well appreciated.
Well, right or wrong, I also tend to find myself doing that for younger women. And I don't know if I have to pay attention to that, I think, but I do feel like there's a lot of younger women that tend to be dismissed if they don't have the experience that they'll have a couple of years from now, but they do have some creative ideas. And I think it's worth listening to all those ideas. And sometimes you pull a little bit from each one and you have a grand idea, right? But you need to go through that process.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting to talk about the younger women, and here we're talking about the quote older women, and like we can't win, because I remember being a young woman in corporate America and being dismissed for being too young and not being listened to. And then finally, you know, getting the experience under my belt and getting the confidence under my belt. And then, oh, well, fuck you. Now you're old and nobody cares.
Like being an avocado, you have like a 5-second window of being right.
Well, that sucks.
And you're expired. Get out.
Yeah, there is a bit of that, right? And we have all worked in male-dominated fields. I've worked a lot in tech. You both have worked a lot in the medical life sciences. And it is hard to be heard in those type of rooms. I've definitely been spoke over. I've definitely had someone just say my idea louder. No. I don't like it. So my kind of invisibility, like I started noticing it around the time that I turned 40. But I also turned 40 in the year of our Lord 2020. So,
Good times.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you remember, but that was a shit year and a weird year, right? And so, like we didn't fraternize a whole bunch. And so then once we could go out into the world, I was just like, hello, knock, 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 hello. Like really felt invisible and found it pretty confusing. And it's not just the male gaze of someone finding me attractive or wanting to flirt with me or something like that. It is even like shopkeepers and walking down the street and all kinds of different ways that I was just like, oh, what is happening? A girlfriend and I were standing waiting for a table at a restaurant, and these two men walked right past us, almost knocked us over, and tried to get a table before us. Literally did not see us. And they almost knocked us over.
Wow.
And
That's
so
insane.
we had to, and my girlfriend is 5 foot tall in heels, and she stomped up there and she wasn't having it. I was like, that's right. We are not having it. And then they threw a little hissy fit, which was so cute. But it was like we did not exist.
Yeah. They were mad because you were existing there before them? Like, what were they? That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't very neat. I didn't like it. All of that being said, though, there are some benefits to being invisible, to being undetected, because you can fly under the radar at times. And there are times that I do want to fly under the radar. And that doesn't mean I'm not doing something badass that's going to sneak up on you. So I definitely have experienced some benefits of invisibility, and also giving fewer fucks for sure. Like, I don't need your attention. It is a great thing to learn when you don't have it any longer and you're like, cool, bye. It hasn't been all bad, that's for sure. Monique, what do you think? What about benefits that you've experienced?
So what you just described, I agree with that 100%, that not only do you not give a shit anymore, but you can go in and out of invisibility.
Totally.
And I was thinking about times when I get so frustrated with my voice not being heard, I completely shut down. And I'm like, okay, this is where you want me. This is where I'm going to stay. And that's all you're getting. And I have to protect my energy and all of that. So I do like allow myself to become invisible and move on.
And what a loss to them, right? Exactly.
Yeah, actually, it is.
Yeah.
And I do think we can slip in and out of that in different situations. Could even be the same people, but in different situations, you move through that. And I think it's important to be aware of that and use it what best fits you, right? Not let someone else determine when you're invisible.
Yeah, take that power, right? Turn it into a superpower.
Yeah.
Barb, what about you?
I was just going to say, like, I think I cottoned on to that as something being in my control kind of mid-40s. So a lot happened for me at that time. I started my business, so I pieced out of the rat race, and a lot of that was like corporate. I was really burnt out from trying to fit in and like fight for every piece of acknowledgement. And I was thinking about through some of those fights, like I was running a division of like 60 people and was not allowed, was not invited or mentored or shown in any way like the budget, not even like the payroll budget for my team of people. Like I had to make up my own damn spreadsheets for people, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't being mentored or prepared for additional leadership beyond that. Like, so thinking about like the ways in which I was just not seen as a real leader, or like having the controller at that company tell me to my face that I was a glorified babysitter. So finally leaving that organization and deciding to start my own company, and then from there, over time, learning that I could choose who I was going to work with. And it was people who valued what I could do for them, and people who respected and valued my time. And even now today, like, I really like everybody that I get to work with, and they sure see me. They sure see my value. And only very occasionally do I have friction because one or two companies are a little more corporate than I love, but there are still compromises because you need to make revenue goals, et cetera. But for the most part, it's all really good, right? And so I don't feel as invisible because I've chosen I've chosen who gets access to me in those business settings. But likewise, like around mid-40s, I got divorced. And that changed a whole lot of things, including my relationship to my own self, and had to learn a whole lot about self-love and care. And boy, that was a whole journey. And I had kind of a renaissance. And I don't advocate for divorce as how you make friends with yourself, but that's what I needed to do, you know? And boy, did I feel really incredible and really visible once that happened. I really got a lot of attention once I started feeling myself and let people see me. And there's a difference between unwanted attention and invited attention. And chosen reciprocated attention, right? And safe reciprocated attention, right? And I think the one thing that's a win about that now is that like I can be in situations and choose to be invisible. And I can remember being a young woman and being out in situations and being like, shit, I don't feel safe, or getting or being the recipient of very aggressive, unwanted attention, and not feeling like I could protect myself from that. And that just doesn't happen anymore. Like I don't have to think about that when I leave the house. But I know for young women in my life, that is something that they still have to think about when they leave the house. So that's like, I think a huge win as an older woman. Like I'm not the recipient of that kind of shitty attention anymore. But it is also really a win to be able to own my own physicality, my own sexuality, and just like when I'm ready to engage with that, to be feeling myself and be on with that, and to receive whatever kind of positive attention for that I want, if I want to put that out there. And then when I don't, to not. And then like now as a person in menopause, like exploring that topic all over again, because what does it mean now? We have like no real models for what that's even supposed to be. Like I'm supposed to be a grandma right now, you know? What does that even look like, you know?
So Barb, that's a really good point, because there are no models for us professionally either, right? But I think about the fact that my mom in the 70s couldn't have her own credit card until the
totally
mid 70s or early to mid 70s, something like that. And I think about women not only working in a professional environment, but all three of us have our own businesses, right? And there's not a lot for us to go on, given that the generation before us was just still getting out in the workforce and that sort of stuff. So I feel like there's such a large area it's not completely uncharted, but there's a lot for us to figure out still. And so we're learning as we go. And it sounds like we all felt differently when we had our own businesses and were able to pick and choose who we work with and who we don't, right? Like we don't have time for the BS anymore. Let's find the people that we really want to work with and gravitate towards them and hold on to them and all that stuff. But what does a young woman do today? I imagine it's really hard. I also imagine that, like me saying, don't give a shit about it. Like, don't let it happen is not useful.
Right.
Right. Easier said than done, right?
Right?
Yeah.
So it makes me think there's some work for us to do for that younger generation to figure out how they can be more aware and in charge of their quote unquote invisibility.
Well, and just how they can navigate being a woman, a professional woman, because it has a lot of landmines. And I agree. I think my experience would be a lot different if I was still in corporate America and the battles that I would be battling, the fights that I would be fighting, because the people that choose to work with me see me. And that's great. They hire me. And I have great clients and I like the people that I work with, and I'm definitely not invisible to them. They see me. So my experience professionally hasn't been as deeply impacted since I decided to nope out of corporate America.
In prep for this conversation, I was looking on Threads and followed a whole conversation, and there's a pretty strong difference between the folks who were in hardcore corporate jobs and the folks who were independent or smaller companies, and the folks in the super corporate jobs were like, I feel invisible, who are middle-aged or older and were like, I cannot get anyone to listen to me, or I'm in my 50s, I just got laid off. Everyone that I talk to wants someone with a fresh perspective, which apparently is not me. Like, it was just really, it was disturbing.
That is a scary thing about looking for a new job after, I don't know what that age is. What is it? That, yeah, they're looking for a younger perspective, different perspective. They also don't want to pay as much. God forbid you step out of the workforce for any amount of time and then try to get back in. There are a lot of decks stacked against people over a certain age, and I wouldn't limit that to just women.
I can actually remember interviewing a woman, and I think at the time I was in my early 30s, and I interviewed a woman who we ended up hiring, and she was amazing at what she did. But in our interview conversation, I believe she was like in her mid to late 40s at the time. And I remember her saying, well, you know, I want to stay in this industry, not only because I like it, but who's going to hire me at this age? In mid-40s, right? And I didn't start my business till I was that age. And there was so much more and so much more good stuff that came after. Like, hindsight's 2020, clearly, right? At the time, it struck me like, I don't think you're that old. And it was just kind of like in passing. But now I look back on that and I think, gosh, like for us to be carrying that for so long seems really dumb, And like it shouldn't be a burden that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Something I wanted to talk about, we mentioned the male gaze. And Barb and I have talked about how we're dressing differently nowadays. So there's some liberation in these feelings that we're having right now, how we fit into society or don't or whatever. And those fewer fucks given has helped me separate from feeling like I need to dress for the male gaze. And I have been having so much more fun shopping and dressing when I pick things that I think really are more for the female gaze. And really, it's just for me. It makes me happy. And that has been really joyful for me. And when I was younger, I definitely felt like I needed to always dress flattering. Whatever the hell that means. And I do think I know what that means. It means thin. You should look stereotypically thin or something like that. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't look thin, God forbid. And I don't feel that need anymore. I've been really encouraged by younger generations throwing away a lot of those conventions, I think, and opening some doors there. And I was like, hell yeah. And it's really changed some of my perspective, and I find it a lot more fun.
Yeah, as I have thrown off the shackles of the patriarchy and embraced my aging self, it's much more about like, what do I like? What feels fun? And also like, what feels comfortable? Because it definitely used to be about what is, oh gosh, I used to be so critical, so insanely critical of my body and it not being like that Western white European colonial super insanely thin. Let's be as tiny as possible because we have to be as small as possible. I don't know why.
Asking us to disappear again?
Yeah. Because it's not just about, like, for me, it's been more about, like, what kind of life do I want to lead? And it's the life of travel and adventure. So I've been, like, I treated myself to a new jacket from a super sustainable, ethically sourced, like, brand. It's this little jacket. I've been wearing it all the time, like a 5-year-old. Like, every time I'm going outside, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to build my outfit around this jacket again. And that's what I've been doing, because it makes me feel like Adventure Barb. And that's who I am right now, right? So Adventure Barb is in charge of the clothing right now, and that's what we're doing. And it's just a lot more fun. I also am throwing in the trash can any rules around dressing for your age. Have you ever seen any of those horrible lists? Mm-hmm. Like women over a certain age shouldn't wear like t-shirts with funny things on them.
Oh, graphic tees?
Graphic tees, yeah. I've got an entire drawer full of them, and I will continue to wear them even after I'm put in the nursing home. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's like, it should just be fun. Like, clothing is just an expression of who we are as human beings, and it should be fun. It shouldn't be about
rules.
Mm-hmm. Just like music and singing and dancing should not be about like how good we are at it. It should just be about how weird we are as little creatures, right? So, okay, I'll pause there.
I mean, we all need more joy, and dressing for joy, dancing for joy, singing for joy, instead of perfection or what someone else deems acceptable, is where I want to hang out anymore. The world is hard. Being an adult is hard. Where can we sprinkle in more joy and happiness? And if someone's telling us we're not doing it right, they can fuck off. Definitely fuck off. I feel like this is related. Barb, you mentioned going gray. And I'm silver foxing is what I call it. I stopped dyeing my hair when I was 21 and I did it for fun back then. And I willed my hair to go gray in like a streak on my part and it worked. I don't know. I just like sent all my gray juju to this one spot. And I just don't think that only men can be silver foxes. Fuck that. And so I want to be a silver vixen. Let's do this. And I've always admired women with beautiful gray hair. And I just wanted to go gray like that. And my mom didn't. My mom dyed her hair for a really long time. My mom now dyes her hair purple, which I'm like, hell yeah, do that.
That's fun.
But Barb, what's your gray journey?
So my hair started, everyone in my family went gray really, really young. So I started getting grays in my 20s and I was fully dyeing my hair by the time I was in my 30s. And it was pretty stressful because my hair grows fast. So by like week 3, I was getting the skunk stripe. And as a perfectionist, that was unacceptable. So I was just getting my hair dyed all the time or putting like eyeshadow on my part and just having to deal with it all the time. And it's expensive. So somewhere, again, in that mid-40s place, I said, fuck it, chuck it. And I was like, I'm not dyeing my hair anymore. So I started growing it out. And it was right about the time that I was also, like, I was no longer going into a corporate office. I didn't have to worry about it. I was starting the business. I was working from home. So convergent things happening. I was also probably in perimenopause and my hormones were all over the place. And just like a lot of things were happening. And I had them do highlights occasionally to try and blend it. And when my roots got to about my ears, I just had them chop my hair off. So it was the first time I had had anything other than long hair since I was a little kid.
Wow.
So again, this was a thing, like I'd always had long hair for ballet and I had this very strong attachment to the idea that a woman had to have long hair. It was something that my dad always was like, your long hair is so beautiful, don't cut it. Like I had this really, and I was at a place where it's like, I need to do something different. I need to change this. Like something in middle age was like, wake up, you know? So I chopped my hair and I felt like literally so much lighter having done that. And so I had this cute little bob cut for a number of years. I just went and got my hair cut regularly and like continued to just occasionally get highlights. And so what has happened really recently is I also finally was like, I'm really tired of getting highlights. I'm not doing it anymore. And I just had my hairdresser person whom I love just do some toner to blend out the highlights because they were getting a little yellow. So what I've got going on right now, I'm fairly silver and gray on top. I've still got mostly my own brown in the back. So I've got like a Australian cattle dog blend going on here, which I love. I get compliments on it all the time. And I'm like, it's just my hair. So it's really nice because I don't have to really think about it. I can go in and get a haircut. We want to do some toner to take out some of the yellow. I've also got purple drops that you put in when you've got silver hair because product builds up and makes it yellow. And I like it. And it's really nice to just be like in relationship to just my hair and not have to worry about like, oh, I've got to go get the color done. I've got to stress about the skunk stripe roots. And it's really nice to not have that piece of
it's expensive
worry.
time.
It is expensive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Spend that money on airline tickets.
You both mentioned how we're treated pre-menopause and post-menopause. As a pre-menopause person, like, tell me what that means.
I think it's less about people treating me differently pre and post menopause and more like my awareness of how my body is different. So a couple of interesting things that I've learned about aging is that aging doesn't happen in a linear fashion. It happens in a couple of like bolus events. So you might be going along feeling great and then have like a more intense period of aging, like, I don't know, mid-40s, let's say. And then
it's been shown it's 44.
Yeah.
44 is the age.
And then you will be cruising along feeling great. Everyone's like, you look great for your age. It's because I'm not really aging anymore. I did it all at 44, right? And then it hits you again at like I don't know, whatever the number is for you and your genetics, but it might be 54 or 5 or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, what the fuck is happening? It's because you age in these clusters, right? And so especially around menopause, when all of a sudden your estrogen tanks, and which, by the way, like, all this stuff is normal, but like also things happen with that you are unprepared for, and everyone is different for, and the medical community will gaslight you about as if nothing is wrong. So if your doctor is not listening to you, please find another doctor. But you really have to rebuild your relationship with your body during menopause. Like, everything you knew about how your body works is now different. And maybe it's extreme for me because I feel like I had an accelerated journey to menopause because I was taking tamoxifen after breast cancer. So I feel like it shortened that tail for me, and I got through menopause quickly. And actually kind of a relief, honestly. Like, maybe it made it quicker, less painful for me. I'm here now. But I have super dry skin. I was never a dry skin person before. I have super dry hair. I only wash my hair twice a week now. And I put castor and rosemary oil in my hair before I wash it so it doesn't break, you know? I was the oiliest person on earth before menopause, you know? So you have to, like, learn all these things all over again. You just have to relearn your body. And that even includes, like, what is my relationship to sex and sexuality now? Because it is also different. It does not feel the same pre and post menopause. And I mean, even in terms of, like, desire. And so, like, I think a time to stay curious about it. Also, like, I'm aware that I can see pictures of me. I've visibly aged in the last 5 years. Of course I have. It's 5 years. You know what I mean? And I can tell that other people can see that. And I think it's super subtle, but sometimes I can tell the way it impacts how people that have known me for a while respond to me. It's very subtle. It's not really a big deal, but, you know, maybe it's because of, like, my ADHD-ness that I'm picking up on that, but I can definitely feel it from people. And then the question is, do I care about it enough other than to do anything than notice it? And most of the time it's like, I don't think I care about it other than noticing it is just a thing.
I'm trying to remind myself that aging is a privilege.
Yeah.
I'm trying to have a positive lens, that the lines in my face are from smiling and isn't that joy. And I think this time in my life, in a woman's life, it's a pivot point, and it's an opportunity to reevaluate things. Certainly your relationship with yourself, but I've reevaluated a kabillion things in the last 6 years for me. And I'm glad for that opportunity. I couldn't continue on the way that I was before and the way that I moved through the world before. And unfortunately, I had to have some heartache and hardships that contributed to the reevaluating, but I'm better now. And so I see that as related to this aging time and this awareness of change. And I keep trying to see it positively. Mm-hmm. And it's not always easy. 44 was the year that I had to take 4 people off my Christmas list because they're dead. That's another part of aging, is the people around you are getting sick and dying. And I sure don't like that. But I'm glad I'm still here to experience it, even if it's hard.
Yeah.
Is there any, like, final things that you wanted to say about invisibility of middle-aged women or anything related to that topic?
I would just like to say everybody's different, right? And it feels like between being the ingenue and the wicked stepmother or whatever, there's a big area in there, right? And I think it's important for us to make sure that our own voices are heard, but also those of the women around us, regardless of their ages. I think that's an important piece of all of this.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're not a monolith. And And we are certainly speaking from our perspective and our personal experiences. And we are white women, and people of color, women of color have different experiences that we don't have that lived experience.
For sure. I think what I would add for anyone listening, and you're not behind and it's not too late. And like for women who are in their 40s feeling like, I don't know, however they're feeling, like it's never too late to do a new thing. Like lots of people start amazing things mid 40s. Like a lot of women find their stride in middle age.
I agree. I love that. Thank you for sharing it. Barb, Monique, thank you so much for talking about your experiences as a woman in middle age. I appreciate you sharing your perspective and your stories. Now I'd love to do a thing I call Joy Share, and each of us will share one thing that is currently bringing us joy. I'll start. This one surprises me. I recently joined a gym. What? And that is bringing me joy. Also, what? Really did not see myself joining a gym ever again, but I needed something to kind of reinvigorate my fitness, and a new gym opened up near my house. And so I joined less than 2 weeks ago. I've been 5 times. So the gym is bringing me joy, and that shocks me.
That's great.
What about you?
So I have gotten back into watercoloring, which I used to do when I was younger, and I got out of it totally. And one of the many things I've learned from TikTok. So I just love watching other people creating them, and it kind of spurred me to jump on that and start again. Very slow in that process, but it's one of those things that for me, I can, sit down and start it and the hours go by and I feel better about the world.
Beautiful. My Christmas gifts was watercolors. I'm going to start doing that. And I've watched some YouTube tutorials and I'm like really excited about it. Neat. Barb, what about you? What's your joy share?
The big one is still my most recent travel adventure. I'm still riding pretty high on my Egypt adventure with my lady traveling squad. I still am like going back and looking at pictures and enjoying all my doodads and epic trinkets that I brought back and textiles and all of the treasures that I brought, and just like being able to relate the stories and relive, like savoring the experience. And being able to recall the incredible experience, especially the Sahara Desert Day, which was unexpected and really, really amazing.
That's wonderful. That's a good experience to live that joy for so long. Like that's what you want. Wonderful. Silly little story about me at the gym. I'm not even like hitting it hard. I'm not like running or like lifting weights. I'm literally going to the gym and walking on the treadmill. And I have found a lot of joy in walking on the treadmill and watching this hilarious TV show. And I am this weirdo who is laughing my head off while walking. Like I had to grab the sides of the treadmill. I'm laughing so hard. And I was like, that's hilarious. And I rewind it and I watch it again and I laugh again. And I'm like probably making a scene and I just can't care. I just can't care.
I love
I'm
it.
having a good time at the gym. I'm a total weirdo. I love it. Okay. Thank you. Again, thank you too for joining me today. Thank you for being on the podcast. Thanks for being my first threesome. Oh, that came out weird. Huh. Okay. But I really appreciate you too. And I'm so glad that you shared your perspective. And I always learn something and feel something after chatting with you. And I hope that our listeners got that too today. So again, thanks. Thanks for being here. And to my listeners who made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so much. Spotify Wrapped told me that 10 of you have Chin Hairs and F-Bombs as your #1 podcast. So thanks. I'm probably one of them. Thank you so much for listening. And if this meant something to you, I would love it if you shared it and chatted with a friend about it. Maybe this could spark some good conversations that you can have in real life too. So thank you. Thank you. This has been Chin Hairs and F-Bombs, and this is your gal pal, Sal.